Can you introduce yourself with your pronouns and what you want the audience to know about you first?
Of course. Thank you for having me. Um, Hello. My name is Vince. I go by he, him, and I'm a 3D artist working at VRChat. I'm also a work creator. For the past 6 years or now on VRChat, creating various experience from cozy worlds to adventure to just about anything.
Can you explain your name and as well as your avatar and where they both come from?
So I have a weird fascination with fish, marine life, but sharks in particular. And I'm not that sure why. It's probably like a childhood thing, you know. Every people they have their own little like they have their own little favorite animals, and mine have happened to be fish when I was a little kid. So whenever I have an online account or anything like that, I usually goes by fins, black fins, red fins, blue fins, and something like that. And on VRChat, I just goes by just fins. There's no colors on it. But yeah, it's just fins as in like the shark fins on top of the sharks. And the avatar is kind of is it used to be a little shark girl, but eventually it's kind of like evolved into this more like I would say Alice in Wonderland theme because I don't know something I really like about the whole thing from the book where you can be taken to like a different place, a different world where it's just like you're just exploring a different reality, and that's kind of like what VR is for, right? The whole thing about making world and exploring different reality and different world. It's almost like being inside the world of Alice in Wonderland, and I feel like it's
Yeah.
fit with the theme a little bit. That's where the whole aesthetic came from.
I'm kind of leaning in more to that idea. So it was like it started as a childhood fascination with marine life and fish in particular.
Yes, yeah. So I grew up in the Southeast Asia region, and not particularly too close to the sea. But when I grew up, my parents and my grandparents, they have aquariums and not just aquariums, it's like pets. Like they were animals, very animal lovers, and I were introduced to a lot of birds and fish when in my early life. I got my first goldfish, when I was like 3 or 4 year old, and ever since I learned how to take care of like certain types species of fish and stuff as I grew up. But I never got to explore, like the underwater or the ocean because it's
Mm.
usually always like on vacation or something special. So I wouldn't watch these online documentary from America uh, that exported to my country at the time, and I would be so fascinated with, able to be there or see them physically. But I didn't have the chance to, not until like, almost like 10 years later when I moved immigrated to the United States and got my first glimpse at an actual aquarium in uh,
Mm.
in my city. So yeah, it's just a long, long fascination. Not just because I like fish, but also it's just like a respect for the life so abundant under the vast majority of our planet, where we don't generally see because it's under the underwater, and there's still
Mhm.
many things that we still haven't discovered yet. And it's always this fascination that the unknown, the vastness of the ocean, that's really intriguing to me.
Can you tell me about your introduction to and your earliest memory of social VR?
Yeah. Um. So I've been social app is nothing new to me. Especially I have a long history of playing like MMORPG, World of Warcraft, RuneScape, the classic RuneScape. Like I spent many years like playing all kind of social games. Even Second Life, I spent probably 3 years on that. But when VRChat came around, it was like a new big thing. I was already very interested in VR at the time, but I couldn't afford it. So I would
Mm.
just watch video about VR in general, what wasn't social VR in particular, just VR. But then that kind of like YouTube recommendation then pushed me into like this VR chat thing. I would start looking at it. I think around 2017, probably 2017. So that was my earliest memory of like social VR in general. But actually no. So I had the Gear VR around the time before I discovered VR chat, and they had those really early like social, I forgot the name, but they were on the Gear VR. They were awesome. They also like a type of social VR. I don't know where they are now. I guess they didn't take off. But on the YouTube side of thing, I were introduced to VR chat thanks to a YouTuber called Jamski. And he were making all this video about like VHS in a nutshell. You think those like the time where like VHS start exploding in like popularity with all the underground and knuckles and everything. So yeah, that's probably was my introduction to it, and I thought, wow, this is kind of fun looking, even though it's kind of chaotic. And I don't have a VR headset yet, but the fact that anybody, even with a desktop, can get into that and enjoy. So even though they call VR chat, it didn't exclude, non-VR people, and I think that was the biggest
Yeah.
draw for me. Because I know I'll someday get a VR headset and I can just, continue enjoying the intended
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Do you have a first world you remember that comes to mind?
First world, I wouldn't say the Great Puck. Just like a lot of other people.
Yeah.
The Great Puck was like that's where you saw what happening on the YouTube video, and usually the Great Puck is the one that actually show up the most in the video. So also as a new user, you're trying to find other people. So when I jump into the platform for the first time, and I'm like, where all the people are, and the top on the list was the Great Puck with the most player inside. So naturally, I'll try to find like the most biggest instant I can get into, and the first account for VHF wasn't this account, it was a different account. It's named a
Mm-hmm.
cat, and
Uh,
uh, so I uploaded like a really like basic cat model with like no animation, no nothing. It was a static cat anime, thing, tiny little cat, and I went to great book, and people was like, hey, there's a little cat, and they start petting me and stuff, and that was my shy way of interacting with because
ah,
I wasn't used to the community. I wasn't used to how the things are. I was trying to like try to get a feel for the platform. So I didn't say anything, I didn't speak at all. I'm just like a
mhm.
static cat model just like floating around the Great Puck and trying to hear people conversation. Yeah, that was my very first couple of days.
What inspired you to start making, like start on this journey to making worlds for people to enjoy, like this one?
Of course. So I love creating just about anything when I was when I was younger in my middle school. I play a lot of games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Mall Tycoon, anything that let you create something, even though it's not like completely fleshed out experience. The one of the first favorite game I was introduced to when I moved to the United States was The Sims one. The very first one, and I would just enjoy. I didn't cared too much about the actual gameplay, the hunger or happiness meter or anything like that. I actually only enjoy creating the house and the park and the place that people goes to in the Sims. And I got the Sims 2, and that's continue. I just make house for my cousins. Then they would move their Sims into that. Later on, Minecraft. And any other game like let's see, I think it was StarCraft. Yeah, StarCraft 2, and just make maps for the community and all of that. So I just had a history of just love creating anything and share it. Um, so that was the whole inspiration, especially when I saw VR chat on YouTube, and I kind of looked more into it, and I found the fact that a lot of the stuff you see in VR chat were user created content, which is at the time the only other platform that does that socially was I think Second Life. But
Uh-huh.
Second Life, it comes with like a really like high barrier of entry, because
Hmm.
to have a plot of land for you to build something on, you need money, a lot of money. You need to rent land, you need to buy stuff, like buy house, and like there's like limitation to the prisms, I think that was what they call, or how much object you can place into that particular plot and all of that. So even though there is some level of creative freedom, it is still really not meant for like anybody can create. So the fact that VRChat let you create, on the get-go, is a huge major, draw for me. And when it's run on a dedicated game engine on Unity, which means there's no limitation. Well, there's some limitation, but not on the level of like Second Life. So the possibility were endless, and that's what drawn me into VRChat a lot. And the first world I created wasn't probably month after I played for the first time, because at first I just want to feel, the the whole game first, kind of get used to it a little bit more socially. But I told the story many times, and my closest friend know about it. But I went to the world called Archery by Sign Laser, and I'm sure many people know about Sign
Hmm.
Lasers. And I didn't know him at the time, but I went to his world Archery, and I picked up this little piece of flyer on the ground, and it say, you know, something about why not create your first world and then show it off at the community meetup or something like that. I think it was like either a contest or community meetup. I don't particularly remember. It was the flyer that encouraged you to create world. I'm like, yeah, I should finally start, looking into this. So yeah, that's when I made my first world. It took me like, I think like a couple weeks, but it was a little cafe. It called Sharkfin's Cafe. And at the time, one of the complaint I hear a lot about people, not complain, but like a request. People like on Reddit and stuff, and they're like, "Is there a rain world that we can go to? Anybody know a world with raining?" Which is really funny, because now any world, like if you open the menu in VRChat and you go to the list, like 80% of the chill world are rainy, or some level of rain. But back then it didn't exist. It didn't exist at all. Not that I know of. So I made the cafe, and I made it rainy, and made, the glass with like the condensation and the rain dripping down, like didn't exist back then. And we had to pull like a shader from shadertoy.com into try to convert it into VHS and use it on the thing, but it wasn't great. It looked pretty weird. But I think I genuinely think that was like the first instant of cozy world with rain and rainy shaders on the glass, and now you kind of see it everywhere. This is a funny history, but yeah.
What do you enjoy about social VR the most, and what do you think could be better about it?
Yeah, social VR is so broad, and it's almost like a mimic of real life, almost. I think it's very encouraging, at least for me personally. When I joined VR Chat, and for the first time, I told you before, I was shy. I didn't speak. It was like, and it really let people be who they want to be. It really let people kind of like be comfortable with their own body, kind of their own image, and that's kind of encourage, and hopefully will encourage people to open up, talking to others and speaking more in the most comfortable, representative of themselves, I would say. And I think that's a nice thing about social media. I wouldn't have this many friends. I wouldn't have this level of, communication, and, having so many people internationally connecting with each other from all part of the world, all walk of life. Like that wouldn't have been possible. Um, sure, you can say the same for like MMORPG or any other game, but it wasn't socially driven. That was not a focus. But unlike any other game I played in the past, decade, like VR chat is the one that formed the closest of bonds, the closest of friendship that you think will last like a lifetime. And some of the people that you never knew that one day you will be depend on, or they would be dependent on you. And I think that's really wonderful thing about social VR. It's really opened up the connection and the possibility, and that was really needed the most right during the pandemic, where everyone was locked inside and we didn't get able to go outside and whatnot. And it was this. Some people might take it a bit too far, right? Like there's always some extremes in situation where people was just use it as a replacement to their real life, or uses as like the only source of their social or other talking to other people. And I feel like there's always good to have a balance. um, not try to have a life outside of VR, but VR is also a wonderful supplement to feeling that little void, of whatever this is missing in your life. And I think that's really great about VR. It's always here. And you can always put on a headset or just get on desktop, and there's just many people out here willing to talk to you. The only thing that I feel like that's not just excluded to, or just not because of social VR in general, but just the whole internet, right? The anonymous, the anonymousness of it, like behind the screen, behind an avatar. Sure, you're using a microphone to speak, but you're still mostly anonymous, and that still sometimes people still being the internet kind of people, they do really bad thing, homophobic or racist stuff, or really just downright offensive stuff. And that's really unfortunate. It was like a part of like the internet that we still have a long way to go. And sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's better. It's really dependent on the context. So if you go into like the black cat in public, that's probably like the worst example of like VR chat that you can find there, with all the screaming, racial slur, little kid and all of that stuff. Like, you don't want to be there. But then if you find your own people, you find your people, you find your community, you find like the corner of all the the creative hanging out with, like, that's where like the magic happened. That's where like the friendship and the balancing between idea and creativity and the sense of community and family. That's where it is. But I know there's a huge hurdle between getting started and getting to that point. It is the hurdle. And as somebody working at VR chat right now, this is something we constantly trying to improve at address.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially just talking about the idea of balance and how
Mm-hmm.
going between different realities, how um VR is still just another, it's another reality, and you have to kind of, you can balance it out with what you have in base reality
Exactly.
and different, and then also just I'm curious too about I'm really excited to see the how the group's features really helped, and you mentioned the hurdles with getting to the communities that you'd really want to enjoy and be with, and uh, um, curious just about that journey, and you know yeah, of course I know there's only so much you can say right now about that, but yeah, just in terms of the concern and like the how you in VR chat want to address that hurdle and those problems with that. I'm curious
Mm-hmm.
about just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, obviously I can only say so much. And also,
Yeah,
I'm on the art department, so there's a lot of technical
yeah,
stuff that I had no idea about. But internally, like, we, not even internally, it's publicly, we've been telling the
yeah.
community that we really want to expand on more into the groups and create
Hmm.
economies and all the future that would hopefully especially onboarding new users to find the people that they want to be with. So if you're from Korea or Japan, naturally maybe you want to be to go to an instant where there are Korean and Japanese, and then hopefully there's a flow that we can like check for that, like, hey, what country are you from? Okay, so this is this instant and this community that you might like to see or join,
Ah,
or
mhm,
something like that. And that wouldn't apply for any kind of other interest. And that ideally like it's very personalized experience for new user, instead
mhm.
of just randomly throwing them into that black cat or something like that,
Right.
and they wouldn't be like, oh my god, what is this? I don't want to play this, and then they would leave, and they
Mhm,
wouldn't miss out on like the best part of VR chat because of the bad first initial experience. And not that you get
mhm.
the black cats, by the way. The world
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
is is beautiful. And I know that the authors themselves, and they are wonderful people. It's just unfortunate that
yeah. Mhm,
the public version of it is known to have that kind of players. It's very
mhm.
unfortunate, but it is what it is.
What do you see as the ideal future for social VR? Like going from now and into the future, and not just for VR chat, but for like all the platforms. What would be, in your opinion, the most ideal experience for people who are just, they're just learning about VR, like you and I were 5 or 6 years ago, and what would we want, or what would you want to see that would be better for them as we've learned about
Mm,
social VR and spent time?
yeah. Um. That's that's quite a future. So ideally, especially I spent 4,000 hours in VR chat,
Wow.
and which is a lot for a lot of people. But like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want VR to replace real life, and that's honestly speaking. I want VR to be treated as a supplement to your daily life. And to go more into that, it would be a place, after a long day of work, you get a VR and you chill out with your friends, have a exploration, do an adventure, or just chill in a home world, or it can be a place of learning. Like VR can be a great social VR can be a great platform to encourage people who have problem interacting, speaking, or it can be a great place for a teacher to take like a bunch of kids on a trip to an aquarium, a virtual aquarium. It can be a place for a meeting happen. If there's
Mm-hmm.
they have if they are a company that would be open up to that, they would have a virtual meeting or an expo or a marketplace. It's the possibilities are endless. It just depends on how people are using it. But my idea vision for um, future of social media in general is just a place is I hate this word so much. I hate it thanks to Facebook, but the whole metaverse. But we don't have any other word
Mm-hmm.
to describe it. But like the whole
Mm-hmm.
metaverse thing is a place where everything exists and everything can be. And I hope that it becomes something like that. It's kind of like, I think the best way for people to understand that would be like YouTube, right? It's a platform
Mm-hmm.
where you can watch stream, you can watch DIY video, or how to fix, your plumbing issues, or how to craft
Mm-hmm.
the wackiest food hack, or it's just about anything. And I want that to be something similar to social VR. It's like the YouTube, another version of YouTube, but not
Ah.
consuming content, but also actively, encourage people to participate and create content in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was something I hope will happen in the future. It will probably get there. I think so. I hope so. But we still have
Yeah.
some work to do until we get to that point.
Uh-huh. I guess the question I have is just more about advice about finding the right balance and, making sure it's like a healthy relationship with, another reality versus your own, and
Mm,
your what's your like advice and or encouragement for users to make sure like they have the right amount of time they want to spend in VR versus, the time that they
mm.
Sure, it's a tricky question, but definitely
Absolutely.
curious
No,
about
no,
that.
I understand. um, yeah. I struggle with this a little bit time to time as well. It's so easy, it's so accessible. The headset is right there. All you do is press the button, and all your friend and all the wonderful stuff are right there, and you can spend all day on it, and not do anything else in real life. And it's so easy to get sucked into that, right? People want to be comfortable. People want to escape. Whatever their life situation is, or their mental, situation is, or the place they are. Maybe they live in a abusive environment, or they
Mhm.
don't have access to transportation, or if they are wheelchair bound and all that. There's just like millions of why ones would choose to spend time in the virtual reality. And for me, it was sort of a form of escapism, but at the same time being a work creators, and needing to understand how things works in real life for me to actually translate it into like a fantasy virtual world, a virtual creation. I needed to understand what the reality is first, because after all of being an artist, all the reference stuff, almost for the foremost coming from the reality.
Mhm.
So
Reality. Yeah.
yeah, so that was the balance for me. I was reminded like I need to go outside, which is almost a meme at this time. The whole touch grass thing.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah, and I don't want to forget that real life just has as much possibilities, as much opportunities, as much wonderful stuff as in virtual reality. And it's always like the amazing fish and aquarium, marine life that I grew up so fascinated with. The thing that we shouldn't be protecting, and doing conservation effort and all of that, like it's
Mhm.
based on reality. That's the reality that we're facing right now. Species are going extinction, global warming, and all of that. That's the reality we have to face with. And this world we're made in the reminder of that. Like this is the beautiful life that you see in virtual world, and one day they may not exist in real life. And the reminder is that we should pay attention more to our reality, and not just forget what we take for granted every single day. So that's my encouragement to players. As beautiful, as fun as virtual reality is, our real life still have much to offer. And I don't want to speak, like on a high horse, or on like speaking
Yeah.
too broadly to everyone. Everyone has a different situation. For me, a couple months ago, I were in the lowest point in my life, where I was like so depressed. I was literally too scared to sleep in my own room. Like if I see my room, like I would like to get a panic attack, and I would literally sleep in VR for like 3 months. Just VR. When it
Oh.
comes to sleep time, I get on VR, I sleep. And that was like a form of like escapism for me, like escaping from like the painful reality that I face with. And now I'm fine. I can
Mhm.
face reality again, and I can come back to it and just coexist with
Mhm.
it. So do what good for, do what appropriate for your situation, but always remember to have balance. Always make sure to take a
Mhm.
break, hydrate, take a walk, and always the virtual world is here. It's never going anywhere else. I hope it's never going anywhere else, but it
Mhm.
wouldn't go anywhere. So take your time.
What part of the creative process do you like the most? Specifically, what type of development, like modeling and animation, or what's your favorite aspect of dealing with the software as it stands right now?
Hmm. Uh, hmm. I think most people can probably guess, but my favorite part of the creative process would be lighting.
Mhm.
Um, I just love lighting. Lighting is just how our world fundamentally work physically. Uh, it's the way that our monkey brain kind of perceive our reality
Mhm.
based on how light bounce and colors and all that. And I just love everything about lighting. Like you can take like the most basic asset, a polygon or of scenes, and you can, with good lighting, you can make magic with how the scene is. And it's so important in setting the tone of the visual, setting the mood, setting a narrative, setting a point of interest. All of that is controllable with just lighting, and the possibilities are almost endless. For the longest time, I so fascinated with realism. It's not always like, oh, realistic graphics is make the good gameplay. That's not. That's I always like a sucker for like game with like great graphic, but it wasn't like what would sell a great game without the story or narrative. But for the case of VR chat, especially in particular, where you're essentially an indie, you don't have the resource to make like the best kind of like narrative or the most you may not have like the programming know-how to make the most fun gameplay, but lighting is the most accessible fundamental that one can do to make their experience immersive to other people. It's probably it may be biased coming from me given how long I've been working with lighting, but I wouldn't say it's a more accessible form of creative process that one can do to elevate their creation to the next level. And dealing with a lot of creative tool over my decade long with I started out as a 2D artist. It's like anybody else. When in middle school, high school, I would draw anime. That's like a lot of how artists started out. They love the anime character. They would draw their favorite anime character and whatnot. And people were like, "Well, you're not gonna get the job. Draw an anime character. Nobody gonna like hire you for that." But eventually, I draw enough anime character where I developed like a understanding of like, the fundamental, where I can actually move on to more serious, type of art, concept art, background art, and all of that, or environmental art, and this can start branching out. But thanks to I met a really wonderful mentor who happened to be the art director, creative director at Legendary Studio, the one that make the Godzilla movies. And he did like a little mentorship for free, which is crazy. I just happened to stumble upon him, and he did a little mentorship, and I genuinely didn't know much. Honestly, my art were like, if I look at it now, I probably wouldn't cringe to like to death, just how bad it is. But he didn't mind as the teacher. He took that as like, okay, here's what you can improve, here what you can do, and every week he would review our art. I would send in my art and he would review it, and it's just in the shortest amount of time I improved so much. He made like, a little comment how he was so surprised of how fast we were improving, and thanks to that particular time that I were able to learn so many fundamental about lighting and composition and all of that, and eventually translated into the 3D world. I'm starting out, just doing like quick blender scenes for my concept art and whatnot, and then I started playing around with like CryEngines and Unreal Engines and whatnot. And the lighting was always like the best part. Just trying to get the lighting to look right. That was really fun. So yeah, I had just the longest, I don't know, journey with like all the software. I'm still nowhere near I want to be. I wouldn't say I'm master at anything, despite working on Unity for like the past 6 years, every single day, almost every single day, breathing the Unity oxygen. But like honestly, I still have a long way to go about learning things, and it's a process. It's never ending, almost never ending, and I don't want that to be discouraging, right? It's just like honestly, I found it encouraging. Like even though you, at some point, you thought that you like, oh man, I got into the point where I'm confident to my level, and that's absolutely great. But then, 2 or 3 years later, I'm just like, oh God, there's still so much to learn. And then for me, that's exciting.
Curious
Hmm.
about your advice to newer creators about um, not necessarily, I don't want to say tips and tricks, but more so like where they should spend their time in the 3D creation process. And would you say that lighting is a place where creators should spend more of their time as they're building, and when should they look into that and think about that?
Mm. Kind of goes back to what I said earlier about how reality is like the anchor for our virtual self, and that's also playing this scenario, or in this case. If you go and you look at real life and how this is my favorite, about like in the afternoon, about 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., where especially in summer, where the sun are in the top at the brightest and shine through your windows,
Mhm.
you get a little light ray, and you see how that particular light casted on the floor or any object, and how that's bounced to other objects. And it's just by observing that, you understand that directional light, strong directional light usually have a very high directional value, and that may be also too technical coming from my bias experience with it, but like just kind of condense that down is that reality is really great reference for a lot of things, including lighting, and by just simply pay a little more attention to what you don't usually pay attention to. How if you put a flashlight under your hand and how you can see like the redness outline of like your skin, or how it shine through your blood and your skin, or how the LED screen kind of like reflect on the shiny surface. Like just pay attention to things in real life and understand. Just by understanding that, you can modify the tool and the stuff to work with you virtually, or in the tool of your choice. And yeah, that's I think my biggest, not even just lighting in general,
Mhm.
literally anything when it comes to the creative process is take reference, and most of the reference are surrounded by you every single day, all around you.
Mhm.
Obviously, look at tips and trick on YouTube. I self-learn from YouTube, ton of time, or even from other form like paid tutorial or paid mentorship and
Mhm.
whatnot. But if I just need a little reference of something real quick, I can look around me on my
Mhm.
room, and that's just right there. So I think that's remember your surrounding, and remember that real life is the best reference you can probably get.
How do you follow through or keep up with ideas that you have before you start building? Or more specifically, do you have a list you keep with assets or worlds that you work on? And again, just how do you follow through on all that if you have a list of things you want to do?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's slightly chaotic and slightly long term. When people ask me what's my inspiration and stuff, and I'm always like that from my childhood consumption of like a lot of media, Hollywood media, whatnot, movies, some of the greatest, classic like Jurassic Park, or the mummies and all of that. Like I grew up fascinated with those kind of media, and I wanted to one day to be part of that, to experience that. And that's what a lot of like the ideas that I have in my, I wouldn't say my brain, I would say my heart, get this such an emotional anchor of my childhood dream. Like literally on my bio, I wouldn't say like it's my dream to bring my childhood dreams to the world and realizing it and show it, with other people and sharing it. And that's my whole process of having ideas that I really want to do in a long time. I want in like treasure heist, that was a combination of
Mhm.
growing up with Indiana Jones and
Mhm.
the mummies, and I want to be a part of a exciting expedition to the ancient Egypt, and facing the Egyptian gods and whatnot, and that was my love letter and my realizing my childhood wishes to come true. And it's not just for me, but also hoping that that will carry on and inspire and maybe accidentally fulfill somebody else childhood dream of wanting to do the same thing. But ideas many. There's so many ideas. I have
Yeah.
so many ideas. But it's just not enough time because, well, each project with if you want quality, if you want good execution, that's require time, require money, and just a lot of dedication and discipline into realizing that idea. Because for me, execution is everything.
Yeah.
And for me, for that idea to realize, I need to execute it in a set of standard that I'm happy with. So it's take a lot of time planning out. Like, okay, this year I really want to realize this idea. How feasible is it? What's the time frame? It's gonna be 4 months. It's gonna be 8 months. What kind of asset do I need? What kind of resource do I need? And how much hours per day do I need to put onto it to realize it? And when creating experience like that, you are essentially a one-man army, right? You need to wear many hats, which is like unusual standard game dev, not
Yeah.
indie, but like standard like studio game dev, where it's so specialized, where you are hired to do one freaking specific thing, only with this one thing. Okay, you're the door guy. You make all the door, and that's it. That's your next 5 years. You make doors. But in here, you have to cover everything. You have to do the environmental design, the concept, the story, the sound design, the the gameplay, the mechanic, the programming. Like that's all on you, and just you. Unless if you work on a team or a collaboration, but usually for me it's just yeah. So all of that need a lot of planning and a lot of follow through, and sometimes you get tired looking at the same project every single day, hours on every day for months on, and you're like, oh god, I just want to get this over with. And it happened. It happened all the time. Um, but for me also, if people will probably notice, music is the biggest,
Mm.
probably the biggest impact when it comes to creative endeavor for me. Uh, Music. So I will listen. I will explore music that I can properly license. Of course, I
Oh.
don't want to get copyrighted stuff.
Mm.
As it's nice, as nice as it is, I want to respect the copyright holder and the artist who created music. But for me, usually I wouldn't like browse like anywhere that they sells music for licensing at with a cost, and I will listen to those tracks and I will just pick apart the instrumental. I pick apart like the tone, the mood, the vibe. I would try to create a little story in my mind based on that particular track. And I would play that track over and over again, just reinforce the idea, reinforce the visual image, and eventually it become a whole world of its own, become a whole idea. And that's how a lot of my worlds came to be. So if you go into my world and sometimes you hear a very particular music track and how it's kind of sync up with the environment, that's what were going on in my head. Even with this Aquarius here, when you went to the door, kind of the door slide down, and then there's the string came in, the music kind of kick in. That's where it came from. And same with every other experience. Music play a very essential role for my creative process. And I understand that can't really be for everyone because licensing music is absurdly expensive, and you're not gonna always get the track that you want to use. So I wouldn't say like it's a universal way I would encourage people to do, but like it one up way that you can elevate your creative ideas if you can. But this is just what worked for me.
With worlds that are, as intricate and detailed as yours are, how do you determine or reach a point where you're satisfied with what you've created and you don't feel like you need to make any more updates? If like, are you like for this world in particular, as an example, have you reached a point with this one where you're satisfied, you don't want to make any other tweaks, that kind of example.
Yeah. Yeah, time is a tricky thing. Given now that, especially now that I work at VHChat, and majority of my day is, doing work for VHChat, and it's already involved Unity and work creation. That was what I'm hired for. So after that, I don't have much else in the day. So I have to divide that, like eating, sleeping, doing, chore, and doing, adult thing, life responsibility and whatnot, but somehow, have time to do leisure, playing games and hanging out with my friends. So it's so hard to squeeze in the time where you try to focus and do your own, creative endeavors. Um, Making my own worlds and realizing it, and sometimes it gets frustrating, right? You get off work, you do your thing, and you start a fish you have to do on your, but you're not getting anywhere. You're stuck on like a roadblock. You can't figure like out a particular problem, or your program crashed. All kind of software issues, and why is it not working the way it is? I've spent 3 hours already working on it, and you feel like just waste the entire day where you could have done something more better, and it's a frustration. It's just part of it. Like I still struggle to deal with it time to time. Um, there's a term for it, like the sunk cost facility. I'm sorry, my pronunciation is not great today.
That's okay.
But yeah, it's just like you sunk so much time onto it, but you're not getting the result you want, and that's sometimes a struggle with a lot of people that I talk to as well. Like I spend so much hours on this, and why is this not the way that I want it to be? And yeah, there's just no easy answer to it. Like you say, this war in particular. Now that I come back to it, at the time I were like, okay, this is ready to go out. But at the time when I came to it, or even right now, I look at it and say, man, I couldn't have done better, or I should have do this better, or I shouldn't have do this particular color differently, or whatever. Like I could have just changed thing. But you have to realize that no matter what, you at some point you have to like let it go, and let it out there and do a thing. Like Complex 7, my most recent work, I could have just spent another couple months on it, expanding, keep expanding, adding more details, but I'll just never finish and have enough time for my other ideas and things, other stuff that I want to do. And I think that's the thing, like especially if you have so many things and ideas and stuff that you want to do, you just have to learn to let go and be happy with what you have right now, and just push it out there. And more often than not, if you are consistent with your quality and your process, and with the sufficient amount of time reasonably, um, it will just be fine. People will like it for what it is. And sometimes that's hard to accept, as like especially I have a perfectionism
Yeah.
to myself, like this needs to be perfect, this gotta look the way it is and stuff, that kind of stuff. And it's really hard to like understand that, and especially when I released Complex 7, and I'm like, why would people want to come here? This is so unfinished and stuff. But I know that's a illogical part of my brain talking. Like my brain's always like want to constantly moving, keep adding more and more, keep working on this forever. But no, the reality is that I think it's truly okay to let it go, and it's okay. It's look good. It's not having major problem. It's not game breaking. It's look decently. You spend a reasonable amount of time on this project. It's okay to let go. And yeah, it turned out well. That is correct. The world is great. People love it. And everything my brain at the time, my illogical part of my brain told me at the time, like this world sucks. You should have worked more on it. Like what's wrong? Sure, I can add more to it. I can always expand more on it, but it's gonna take forever, and I want to do other, ideas and whatnot. And that's also my advice to a lot of, creator. Like it's okay if you are happy where you at. It's always next time to improve on, and that's what I really like when I move to the next project. It's always exciting. Like, wow, this is my bar on the last project. I know I can do better. There's mistake that I can learn from. There is, a lot of places I can improve on, and you don't need to stuck with the past project. Kind of generally speaking, don't stuck with your past and try to move on and improve what you learn, and that's apply with this project as well.
What general advice do you have for newer social VR world builders?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a tall responsibility, but I would say world building, just like any kind of other creative endeavors, require a lot of fundamental knowledge. And that is not, it's not a requirement to get started. As you learn, as you do, just like everything else. It's always helpful to look at work building with the same respect and the same lens that you see like drawing or 3D modeling or anything else, because world creation is encompassing of all of that. So it's always helpful that you also learn how to do art, maybe 2D, maybe 3D, learn a little bit more 3D modeling, learn a bit more how lighting, environmental design, environmental layout, world, building and all of that. Like, if you learn all this skill, and that is something you can also always learn along when you make world building, of course. But if you want to get started on a strong footing, having a little bit of art background and having a little bit of artistic endeavors and dipping your toes into some creative process to get used to it. So by the time that you get to your the process of world building, you don't just only spending time figuring out all the time, and you can actually spend time really do what you want to do and realizing your ideas the way that you want it to be. Just like everything else, learn the basics, learn the fundamental, so that you can start on with a strong footing.
Are there any software tools in particular that you like that made life easier for you in the process, in the creation process, that you'd like to share or recommend with the audience?
Of course. So tools are very subjective, right? Everyone have their own
Uh,
preference of tools. Um, I would say like some people will love, modeling in Maya, but other people who will love modeling in Blender. So it's not my place to recommend this kind of tool. But one thing that I think can work universally for a lot of people, and for myself included, it was like a tool that I can't work without. I would say PureRef, Pure, Pure, and REF, Ref, PureRef,
uh-huh.
one single word. It's a software where you can paste basically Control V, Control C, Control V, pasting any picture you see on the internet or anywhere. Basically, you can drag and drop it
Uh-huh.
into the like this reference board. It's basically a board of reference, and you can organize it. And you can place as many pictures as you want to. You can have like
Wow.
thousands of pictures there, and you can have it stay on top of your Windows. Stay on top of the software that you're working on. You have a different monitor, which is what I do. I have um, a vertical monitor where I wouldn't have just this
Mhm.
board of reference right to my right side. And as I'm working on with my front monitor, I wouldn't just glance over and look at the reference as I work, and it helps a lot. But having reference is fundamental,
Mm.
is critical, driving ideas and inspiration from other works and things you see. And that's just why a place like Pinterest is so popular for,
Mhm.
reference. Like Pinterest is like one of the most popular sites for reference. And I used to hate Pinterest with a passion. Like, why is every picture I
Mhm.
should add on Pinterest? But it's a great place to get reference, and you can save those references into PureRef and have it like compile like based on the project. Every project I do have a separate folder. Okay, this is project, Egypt, and in there there's a PureRef with all the Egypt reference, and they're gonna be in different section of like the pyramid, the interior, the river, the character. They all separate in their own little area, and they all just reference I collect on the internet. So I feel like it's something really useful for basically everybody. Honestly, I always recommend
Mm.
this to every single person. Not just for work creation. This is apply for everything. Drawing, 3D modeling, PureF is amazing for that.
Can you share advice on how newer creators and social VR users in general can take care of their mental health and their physical health as they spend time in social VR and in VR in general?
Um, yeah, it's a heavy one, but um,
Yeah.
for the longest time, yeah, I used to be slightly distrusting of people, I would say, and especially in the earlier day, I was a very introverted person, and I was generally keep people with an arm length. when it comes to friendship and whatnot. It's just a lot of stuff growing up and learning more about the world, and just trying to be slightly skeptical of like people's true intention and whatnot. But more and more I spend time with VR and I learn the genuine sincerity that many people offers. And obviously, there's good and bad, right? There's gonna be bad actor. There's gonna be people with bad intention who want to take advantage of you and stuff. That's just exists everywhere in real life on the internet. But when you know somebody long enough and you have this level of trust and bond that you have with somebody, it's kind of like almost like a family, even though you might never met them before. Yeah, it's just knowing the people that you connect with and spend enough time understanding them and seeing if they are the right person, and the kind of friend and the kind of people you want to foster a relationship with. Obviously, you're gonna hear a lot of story here and there about a horror story about people being taken advantage of, or people being betrayed online and stuff. Like, it happens. Obviously, it happens. Like, there's no foolproof way to read people, and obviously, it's even much harder in VR where facial expression and body language are much more hidden. In real life, how our brain as human being, we learn to read social facial structure and emotion and expression as like social cues, like, oh, this person's not happy with what I'm talking about, oh, this person enjoying what I'm saying, like all that kind of stuff that you don't have that luxury here in VR chat, at least not yet. Eventually, hopefully that technology will be accessible to everybody, but it's hidden, and it's just only one way to really find out is spend enough time, keep a respectable respect for yourself, but also the people you interact with, and just be sincere, be honest, and hopefully that also reflect back on the other person to you, and you can foster a hopefully helpful and mutual relationship. It's a two-way street. But that's kind of like went off topic a little bit from what you're asking. But it's the fun, the basis, because mental health, especially on VRChat, has a lot to do to tie in with socially, relationship and whatnot. And for me, in my case, it was the relationship. It's slightly personal, but that's okay. I'm completely fine with this now. I'm fine with sharing it. I had a relationship for 5 years with somebody I met in VRChat. Really special. And I think I met her around the time when I started making my first world, the first Sharpen Cafe. So it's been a long time. We knew each other for a long time, and she was like my cheerleader, always cheering me on, encouraging me to continue creating and whatnot. And more the time goes, where I want to have a future with both of us. And that's why a part of me, I push so hard creating world and creating experience in VR chat, is that I want to become something that she can be proud of, and somebody become successful to provide for us to have a career, to live together, have our own place and whatnot. So what's like the biggest? So when I was hired when I was hired by VR chat, that was like the biggest moment in my life. Like telling her that I got the the offer letters, and we bust into tears of happiness and whatnot. It was a wonderful time. But as time goes, and that's the thing, right? One of the things that didn't work out for us was the physical distance, long distance relationship. And whereas skinship is what we call it. Skinship is like touch and hugs and all of that stuff, thing that usually you're expected with a relationship, with a bond with somebody. But we didn't have that for the longest time. And yeah, eventually it just didn't work out, I suppose, because we were missing the really essential part of a relationship. And I feel like that's just a good reminder about when it comes to mental health and stuff in social VR. Like having the social need that you need to be met is great. Talking with friends and people that you enjoy hanging out with is great, but it's also a reminder of like it's good to have a balance and seeing other people in real life and having a connection in real life, having a physical, connection with somebody you have in real life was also really important. VR is such a great place, a great supplement to alleviating some of your pain, some of your stress, and it did for me. It really did. It was a place for me to escape to when I was at my lowest point in my life, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I escaped to VR chat and surrounded by people that really care for me, and I will never forget that. I can't imagine if I would have had to go through that alone. Uh, I don't know if I would have made it, to be honest with you here. But I was surrounded with people that really care for me sincerely, and that's the wonderful thing about VR, right? It can be a form of your anxiety and your stress, but it can be a form of escape, and it can be a form of, healing. So it's all about the balance. It's all about knowing what is appropriate, what is moderation, what is, appropriate for your situation. So don't, always, keep in mind that, don't use this as the only form, the only place that you can run away to, but also use it as like a supplement to what you need to do in real life. Because for me, yeah, I ran away in real life. I escaped to VR, but also I was starting to try to take care of myself. Wake up early, eat the healthy meal, start working out and stuff. And those were a critical part of healing my mental health. I went to Venice, Italy, and obviously, no, not everyone going to be able to afford to go overseas or travel. Like, I'm not saying that like you have to do this to get better, obviously. But like for me, it's just like exposing myself to different places and people and culture, and seeing what more life have to offer. In addition to the kind of the help that I'm getting in VR, is part of what got me to this point, to be able to move on and healing instead of just, maybe just cry all the time in VR in the bed and not getting out, not getting up, and not eating and taking care of myself. Like I wouldn't have been in a worse place. So yeah, balance.
Outside events like pandemics or just in general, not just that, but not just external conflict, but also like an internal conflict where you have overcoming not necessarily anxiety, but just thinking about what solutions you can take from VR into back into reality that can kind of like it's like a positive feedback loop, and you can bring
Mm,
that
right.
out of here into make your own like reality. How what are some like things you see that would be helpful for that?
Hmm. I would say the people probably one of the better part. Obviously, when it comes to social VR and reality, a lot of things going on, right? The person stuff. When it comes to either politics, wars, pandemics, environmental and whatnot, like it's depressing. And
Yeah.
but just like anything else, if that's the only source of news, the source of feedback that you get, the whole watching TV and all you see is like end of the world messages, and obviously you're gonna be depressed and scared and anxious and whatnot. And VR, I feel like when it comes to VR, social VR, that's like where it's shines really well when it comes to giving you another perspective. Like I can say, I met people from Ukraine who are still struggling with the Ukraine war, and they offering some of the most, inspiring, profounding um, first person take on the thing that they go into. And when it even comes to like project like this, how I'm always so how much I really adore the marine life and whatnot, and how
Mhm.
global warming, mass extinction and stuff like it's really saddening and very anxious for me to know and see and go into VR, and I do what I can with my part, creating experience like this and try to educate people, the thing that we might take for granted or we don't think about a lot in real life. That also can work oppositely, and how sometimes in real life I get jaded about people maybe from opposite political spectrum, or people from another country that may not agree with that kind of stuff. But then you talk to the people and you see them human to human, even though we are like behind the layers of like our virtual self, but the person behind the screen is still a person after all, and you can learn much more about where they came from, their culture, their opinion, and whatnot, and you can really remind it of like like there's more to the world, there's more to learn, there's more perspective and thing to take on. And I feel like that's a great balance, a great where social VR came in really nicely to kind of like balance out all the thing that you have to deal with in real life and whatnot. I have a few friends who went through like abusive situation in real life where they live in an abusive household, and ranging from maybe abusive parents, partner, husband or not, or whatnot, and these were a part of like connection that they needed, and we were able to provide some level of advice and whatnot, and try to help them through that. And that's kind of story not happening just with me, but like every single day is in VR chat everywhere that you don't hear and you don't see. That kind of stuff happening every day, and there's so many untold story of how people, become better or escape out of that situation and whatnot, thanks to like, the help that they get from here. Obviously, it's gonna apply for every form more in a social platform, but like in here, there's a layer of connection, closeness. Like I'm talking to you right now, I feel like you're right there in this room with me, and that kind of a bond that you can't really find on through just pure text or or video, where it's so one-sided. I feel like,
Right.
yeah, social VR is really great about that.
Where do you find ways? What ways do you recommend for creators who are they've made many worlds, many assets, and they spent some time now in social VR. They're trying not to. They're basically trying to find that original spark, or at least maintain that original spark they had when they first got into the process. And it's a different feeling now, and they're trying to you know
Right.
uh, get back to the spot where they can find that again. What's your advice
Mm-hmm.
for them?
Honestly speaking, I'm probably the worst person to ask about that. but,
It's no problem.
no, burnout is something I constantly have to deal with, and actually, I'm dealing with a burnout like right about now. Like after Complexa, when I was so severely burned out, working on that
Yeah.
project for so long. But yeah, perfectionisms and constantly having ideas and things that you want to do, and the drive to like work. You gotta get this out. You gotta get this on time. There's deadline and stuff. Like it's so prone to burnout, and that's the worst thing you can do to yourself, honestly. Is getting to the point where you burn out and you lose the passion, you lose the spark, like you say, to be able to get back into it. And sometimes it happened to me too when I open up a project. I'm like, God, I don't want to deal with this right now. You just look at the mountain of work that you have to do, especially when it comes to like an ambitious project and you see like a million of tasks. Like, how the heck am I gonna get through this? And it's really exhausting and just really motivating. And this is why so many times I just like close down the project, take a deep breath, go hang out with my friends, play a game, whatever. I play Overwatch sometimes. I go on adventure teams, hang out, just try to
Yeah.
remind of like, especially in adventure team in general, like war hopping. See great world or whatever you see there, and you're like, oh wow, oh, such a great execution. Now I mean I'm a bit more inspired to get back onto it. Or if you go out watch a movie or something, enjoy an anime, anything that kind of like help pull that inspiration back onto you, a little spark back. Which
Yeah.
is essentially this is a long version of like take a break and enjoy life, and hopefully with the right direction and amount of like inspiration that you can get that spark back, and that's kind of what worked for me generally. Um, I wouldn't get burned out, and I wouldn't go back and watch some of the stuff I enjoy. With my friends, see some world that I have similar idea to mine. I'm like, oh wow, they did this. That's amazing. And now I'm like, okay, I want to try to get back onto it, and kind of like get back to the groove. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I get back to it, I'm like, oh
Mhm.
god, now I remind me like, why
Yeah.
am I'm burnt out? But so far, it's what kind of consistent the most for me. It's just like take a break, honestly, take a break, and
Yeah.
during the process of avoiding it, the first obviously that what to cure the uh the burnout, but like during the process, also take a break. Don't put like 12-hour a day onto it non-stop every single day. I did that. I
Mhm.
don't recommend that to anybody.
Mhm.
I don't do not do that. Please don't do that. For the sake of your own health, physical health, mental health, also for your own creative endeavors. Like if you're gonna get burned out, it's just not gonna enjoy what you're making, and then in the process, the execution is gonna be less ideal than what you wanted, and then you're just gonna be unhappy with it, and it's gonna be demotivating, and you're gonna spend more time to get to the next idea and whatnot. Like it's just not good to burn out. So take time, enjoy life. Go out and get a nice drink, play some games, and hang out with your friends, and then get back to it when you feel like it. So yeah.
So, Leslie, do you have any new worlds that you're building right now that you're able to tell us about? And do you know if it's like a timeline on that? And how can we stay updated uh, on what you recommend for us to stay updated on what you're making?
Oh yeah, of course. Project Lost World. It's just the code name for it. It's probably not the actual world name, but the code name for it right now is Project Lost World. This is something I've been wanting to do for the longest time, especially probably one of the first projects I wanted to do when I joined VR Chat.
Ah,
So if you probably know about the movie Avatar, right? Like the blues
mhm.
alien people from
Yeah.
another planet, and we went there, we become the bad guys and whatnot. I saw that
Mhm.
in the 3D IMAX like years ago, a decade ago, and it was like,
Yeah.
God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I
Mhm.
was so entranced by the beautiful forest, the bioluminescence, and the animals and all the floating,
Yeah.
cloud, floating island and all of that. I'm like, oh God, I want to be there. I want to be there. But obviously, it's a piece of fiction, and who knows when we're gonna ever try to like go to another planet. It's not gonna be probably not in my lifetime. But anyway, um, I want to make that a reality. Kind of come back to the whole, making your wish and your dream to be something that you can experience. And that's
Mhm.
something, yeah, I tried a few times. First time when I joined for chef, miserably failed because I have no idea what am I doing. I completely abandoned that. And then probably like 2.5 year into work creation, I tried it again and I did okay. I was okay with it. One of the process that came out of that was Pandora Night, one of the public world, but it wasn't like the actual world. It was like a piece of it. And
Mhm.
at the time, I feel like I didn't have enough experience. Like, okay, I did okay, but like I
Oh.
couldn't learn more. So I kind of put it back in the back burner a little bit, and I
Mhm.
explore other interests. So that's how all this other work came about after Pandora Night. But now I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm truly
Mhm.
ready. Obviously, not gonna be as ready as I am when be like 5 years down the line. Obviously, I'm gonna learn more, gonna be better at
Yeah.
this. But I feel like if I'm gonna wait forever, then what's the point, right? Um,
Right.
so I want to make this reality. So hopefully this year is aimed for the Venice Film Festival. I am aimed to get this released and show the world at the Venice International Film Festival this year, which is I'm intend to come back. So hopefully I can deliver within probably September, August, late August. It's
Mhm.
like probably the hard deadline for me for it to get done. So I guess like probably 6 7 months. Yeah, 6 month ish. So I gotta get going basically. But I'm excited. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you want to keep in touch with that and where it's going, join my group. Fins Work Interactive or follow me on Twitter. VR Fins.